My first gig, wow. For a start, you know, I was painfully shy. Well, I felt that I didn't want a crowd to sit back and ignore me. So I'd go out and I'd jump on the tables and kick the drinks on the laps, and and people started then remembering who I was. Well, that was my first gig, but let's face it, everybody does have their own story.
We know him as an Australian music legend, but where did his story begin?
Just something clicked with the guitar, and I used to just sit in my room at home and just basically learn those songs.
What experiences shaped the artist he would become?
It's just the intensity and volume of rock and roll, you know, just drew me in.
And is there a song that inspired his career?
Say goodbye, goodbye, my little lovely.
There's an indelible image of Mark Seymour. The tight denim jeans, the sleeked back hair, and the form-fitting T-shirt gripping his arms, muscled from years of lugging road cases. Mark embodied the raw sex appeal of Australian pub rock in all its grit, sweat and frenzy. For 20 years, Mark led Hunters and Collectors, unwittingly becoming the band's focal point and primary creative force. Loved by many, the Hunters not only carried a torch for Australian rock, but also made its flame burn brighter. Eventually going solo in the late 90s, Mark's first gigs were as a child growing up in country Victoria. Accompanied by his two sisters and his brother Nick, who would grow up to play bass in Crowded House, music was not only encouraged in the Seymour household, it was compulsory.
Your parents now were sort of instrumental in getting you sort of interested in music. What was the motivation? Were they music fans themselves, or?
Mum, well, they both were, yeah. Yeah, but Mum was really into singing.
Right.
Yeah, she really cultivated. Like, we all used to just sing absent-mindedly around.
Two brothers, two sisters, yeah?
Yeah. But she kind of wrangled us, got us into harmonies, and it was.
That's
she was
pretty
very.
cool. And how old were you?
Primary school.
Right.
Mum put us into this four-piece. We used to do Elvis.
Is that the only time you've been in a band with your brother, by the way?
Only time it worked. Yeah. No, he played on my last album.
Right. And did your sisters continue on with music, or is it a hobby, or are they professionals? Or?
No, they're teachers, but they both sing in choirs and they've had classical training. They've got really powerful voices. But.
Was it good for you, like, getting in front of a crowd?
Yeah. Well, I always liked performing. I must say that was the one thing that sort of stuck in my mind from a very early age. I liked actually singing to people.
Right.
And I think I was
Was that to show off,
Probably.
Or was it, because it makes you sing different, whatever.
Well, that's right. I mean, Mum and Dad, they used to push me a little bit more than and get me up in front. I always remember being in front of the fireplace in front of the relatives singing.
Right, yeah.
Where is Love from Oliver Twist.
Right.
and Dad going, oh, isn't that so lovely?
I used to do the same. When I was 5 and I first started school, they used to send me in the morning around all the classes to sing a song. Oh. I'm not sure if it was because I was just such a ratbag they wanted me out of the class. Yeah. Were you listening to gospel music? What was the family listening to?
No, not really. No, we didn't really have much exposure to American music.
Right.
That came quite a bit long time later.
So it was traditional hymns and stuff
and folk too.
And folk.
Mum really locked on to the Clancy brothers and Tommy Makem in the 50s, and she just picked up. I remember it was sort of in the early 60s, she just picked up a couple of these long-playing records, and she was really into that, and that was a real revelation.
I can hear that in your songs. I can hear the Irish, folk influence.
Yeah, just a particular way you kind of plot a melody.
Yeah. So at what point in that sort of process did you start to sort of not drift, but start to form your own taste in music? There
was a combination. Dad bought us all little nylon string guitars. We all got them, which was fantastic that they did that.
Yeah, they're very encouraging.
Yeah. And but I just kind of really took possession of the guitar. Just something clicked with the guitar, and I used to just sit in my room at home and just basically learn those songs. Like I'd listen to them on the record and just it's something clicked. I mean, I was definitely obsessed with it because the thing about a guitar was that you could sing and play at the same time.
Yeah.
The idea of doing that really interested me.
Though he spent much of his childhood singing with his family and learning guitar, the kind of overwhelming passion for music that many often speak of didn't rouse in Mark until his university days. Finally escaping the shelter of a religious rural upbringing, he followed his brother Nick into the euphoric late 70s music scene of Melbourne. His passions ignited, Mark was soon forming his first band.
When you moved to Melbourne, like before you had your own band and stuff, you know, you going out to pubs and clubs in Melbourne, what were you noticing? What was going on?
I didn't really have much exposure to live music for many years, like adolescence. Came to town, got really stuck into my schoolwork, and I was really pretty straight in my teenage. But my brother he went to art school.
Right.
And he started going out to see...
Those arty tapes.
Yeah, you know, and he ended up really getting caught up in Melbourne underground rock music, and he sort of dragged me into it in a way. And we used to go to the Tiger Lounge in Richmond.
Right, yeah,
just to
played
see
there.
all the punk bands, you know, from 1978 through about 1980. It didn't take long, you know, like just seeing the first couple of times I saw live bands, I just started thinking, you know, it's just the intensity and volume of rock and roll, you know, just drew me in, you know.
Yeah. And did you get the flashback to like performing as a kid, that thing about being in front of an audience? And...
I sort of nurtured secret fantasies about looking up at people like Nick Cave in The Boys Next Door and going, I can do that.
Did you work for them for a while?
Yeah, I roadied for him.
Yeah. We had, what we called the spider or something like that?
The crab.
The crab? What was that for? I did this
thing on all fours. I was good at
getting across the stage without getting noticed.
Well, that's what crew did in those days.
Yeah, that's right. Just get on and get off. Yeah. One of your first bands was it the Jetsons?
Yeah, the Jetsons, yeah.
How did you get that started and who was in it?
Well, it was Doug Faulkner on drums, John Archer on bass, Margaret O'Neill, who ended up becoming a political correspondent for the ABC. Yeah, she was a singer.
Yeah.
And she works for Four Corners now.
Right, okay.
I see her on the telly. That was kind of like a pop band. It was very, you know, Blondie, B-52s, that style of stuff. It was original.
And what were you a guitar player?
I was a guitarist, yeah.
Right.
I just wanted to be the singer in the end, you know. And I was sort of standing behind Margot and sort of fuming quietly.
Just waiting for her to leave.
So I did this leaving act, which kind of pissed everybody off, and then sort of went back to a few of them with my tail between my legs a couple of years later and said, I want to form another band.
Yeah, right. Were you roadieing for Nick Cave while you were in the Jetsons, or was that after? Or...
No, that was when that was after Hunters and Collectors had been formed.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Ah, so what year was that in?
81, 82.
81, 82. Yeah. And then that was a couple of guys at the Jetsons.
It was John and Doug and me.
And then I just remember
and we picked up a bloke
Cast
named...
of Thousands, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. There's Greg Prano on percussion, Ray Tosti on guitar, Jeff Crosby on keyboards.
Right.
And then the brass came in a bit later, but it ended up being an eight-piece band.
Eight-piece band, which must have been a nightmare to sort of try and support before you...
Well, that's why I was crewing for Nick Cave.
You know, let's face it, everybody has their own story.
I would say the first gig where I felt like some people quite liked us was when we played Tea in the Park. Just after Yellow had come out. We sort of expected a few hundred people, that's kind of what we'd been used to. And the tent was completely full and there was people queuing outside.
And Jeff, our tour manager at the time, who we really only associated with red wine, less with tour management, he was like, it's full. He was like really shocked. We were like, okay, we better start getting good. And we're gonna have audiences like this.
Should have worn less shit clothes.
In the next chapter of My First Gig.
Straight away, like bar one, I thought, this is the business.
Max takes you back to the start of the music.
You know, sometimes I'd have all the lyrics and the songs all sort of on the stage, on the floor, and I'd be sort of looking down to figure out what was going on.
Join Jimmy Barnes as he unearths the story behind the success of Peter Garrett.
You want to have a go at this?
Yeah, why not?
I've never done a duet with a politician before. Luckily, I know you as a singer.
My First Gig, Monday, 9:30 p.m, exclusive to Max.
Mark Seymour's first gigs were as a boy in country Victoria singing hymns. It would take time for Mark to discover his own passion for music. Following his brother Nick to Melbourne, where he joined bands, was a roadie for Nick Cave, and began to pull together Hunters and Collectors. As a band, Hunters and Collectors were an ambitious undertaking. Not only would Mark finally fulfil his wish to become a lead singer, and the band itself would have more than the usual number of members, they also hoped to be received as a creative collective. Each member's role was equally significant as the next. However, everyone would discover this ethos had its pros and cons.
How did that band develop? It's really unique, you know what I mean?
Because of the fact that we had that open, anyone was entitled to throw an idea into the room, you know, like that was the philosophy behind it. It didn't necessarily work out that way, but it just meant that the music changed really quickly over a relatively short period of time. So stylistically, it was moving all the time. You know? We never really settled down into one genre, you know. The
first gig that the Hunters did was the Seaview Ballroom. We want to talk about that gig? What do you remember about it?
Well, that was this room in the George Hotel in St Kilda, and the guy that had been running the Tiger Lounge, which was a room I used to go to earlier on with my brother, he decided, he had this brainstorm. He saw this empty pub that had like 3 big rooms in it. Right. And they were basically ballrooms from the last century. It was a beautiful old building. And he decided he'd just have multiple shows on, and the whole idea of this club just took off, and people started coming there from all over Melbourne, and you know, it became the home of alternative music.
It's all about waking up in Melbourne. It's raining, of course.
I know. An early Hunters set, were you doing any covers?
No.
That was all originals?
Yeah.
So who were you listening to? Like Talking Heads?
Talking Heads, yeah. Then pop group, you know, English hardcore. English hardcore alternative music, yeah. There was a lot of funk in there as well, you know, but that slow groove. There was something a bit Germanic as well. We picked up a lot of stuff from the Cologne school, like Cannes, alternative music out of Germany. Right. So it was pretty experimental in its early form. Yeah.
Right, yeah. There came a point in the Hunters, you know, career where you really sort of, you know, you were obviously the driving force, and you know, the write-ups about the front man, about the energy, and about the, you know, did that put strain on the band?
Yep.
Yeah. They didn't like it?
Well, it was just sort
or
of
did you like it too much?
Well, yeah. Well, I you know, it became inevitable that because I was the guy out front running around and yelling and screaming and just doing it, which was entirely acceptable within the band, but I just started getting more attention in the media and became the spokesperson. And
did the band resent that? No.
Yeah, I think they did. Not everybody, but people were pretty tolerant in the end. I mean, when people realised that it was just a natural part of the game, you know.
And that's your gig. You're the front person. You speak. You know,
it's just an extension of that. But the band, because we were so. And we made such a big deal amongst each other that we were all equal and we all had an equal say and everything. It did kind of create tension.
Right.
But look, the big issue for me in the longer term was the songwriting. That's ultimately what frustrated me more than anything. You know, like I was always wanting to move things forward, and I was always new ideas. And actually, I think in the end, it was probably personalities.
Right. Yeah. You know, like it was full on. The shows I used to go see you all the time, and I was always impressed just with how you sustained that. And you know, I know how I sustained it. It was, you know, but it was chemical. But yeah, I mean, you were. What was you had a different approach completely?
Oh, a couple of beers would do it.
Yeah, but you were pretty fit. You still are. I can tell. Yeah.
Yeah, look.
I always thought you were a marathon man, you see.
I did a bit of running. I did quite a bit of running. Yeah. The live shows just lift me up.
Yeah.
You just get caught up in it, and the volume and intensity, and we all fed off each other. And you know, I'd push and they'd pull, and you know, it kind of some nights were better than others. But I think that my theatricality, you know, pushed the band. You know.
And the clip for Talking to a Stranger, that was Richard Lowenstein, wasn't it?
That's
in the early
right,
days, which was a great clip. You know, it was a really. I remember that song and that clip. I was watching and going, "What's going on here? This is."
Well, we all felt the same way. He just invented this. He just had a vision of this sort of post-nuclear world that he just heard in our music. You know, and it was really Richard's vision just came out on the screen, and we were like completely, you know, blown away by that video clip, and it really set the ball rolling. I mean, we signed deals internationally very quickly. You know, we got a deal in the States and Britain.
And what were we doing in America?
Touring. Yeah, we toured the first album there in '83.
Oh, right. What sort of tour? Supports or?
A little student club tour, yeah.
Right, yeah.
We was, you know, Talking to a Stranger was getting a little bit of college
airplay,
radio.
Yeah. How'd they take to you? I don't think they would have known what to expect with them.
Oh, no, it was really...
Because cultures will confuse them completely, and I think Hunters were sort of more of an enigma again.
Well, it's just American music, I just think, is such a niche, even though it's global and we all participate in it.
Yeah.
Really, the Americans have a way of digesting their own music that's completely different than the way they react to music from internet. I mean, you think you sound like you're playing
American
music that would appeal to them, and they just see Australianness.
I remember reading somewhere after Cultures had broke up that that the Hunters were sort of taking over the mantle as the kings of pub rock in Australia.
Yeah. Which we were very proud to do.
Which I think you did, but I think it wasn't just sort of took over the mantle. I think you actually just sort of progressed it, and took it further. It was a totally different thing,
We believed eventually, like after we'd travelled internationally for quite a while, and we, as I said to you earlier, that we observed the state of music in Great Britain when we went over there, and we actually realised, because that all happened to us so early, and we were touted as being the next thing that would sort of explode out of Australia.
Yeah.
And when that didn't happen, we kind of realised, well, what was it about what we'd experienced at home that had excited us so much about... We just suddenly looked at Australia as being the land of opportunity. And music became... And we thought that live music was an integral part of the changing face of the Australian culture, and, we wanted to be participating in that.
It's one of the things that we had over Britain. If you look at Britain and America, that you go there and bands were paying to play, and they were just desperate for a gig, and we couldn't believe that. We could go out and work for 8 gigs a week, cash in your pocket, and also just the continuous, that drive from an audience that was drawn, like making you work harder.
That's right, yeah. And we just really picked that up and ran with it, and that became the backbone of our careers, just touring the clubs of Australia. Yeah. I had a vision of
me and you
singing this song.
You don't make me feel like a woman anymore.
That's right, yeah. But not looking at each other while we do it.
You don't make me feel like I'm a woman anymore. Heard your footsteps at the front door.
From singing in choirs as a child to rediscovering music amid the thriving Melbourne scene of the late 70s, Mark Seymour's greatest recognition in music would come as frontman of Hunters and Collectors. 20 years of recording, touring and accommodating a large group of creative thinkers had taken its toll on the Hunters, seeing the band part ways in 1998. A solo career had been on Mark's mind for some time and would quench his thirst for independent creative freedom. Synonymous with pub rock, Mark worked to carve his own identity and reached back to the folk-infused singer-songwriter music of his mother's record collection he'd heard so often growing up.
What was the first solo gig and how did it feel?
Actually, the first solo gig was in Wellington, New Zealand, in a little student bar.
Acoustic or with a band?
No, on my own.
Oh, really?
And, it was
extremes.
Yeah. Well, and then it was kind of solo. I literally did it like that for a couple of years.
Right.
I didn't put a band together for about 2 years.
Right.
And, I mean, it was great. I got what I wanted, which was, being able to write independently of anyone else. But then you don't have someone there all the time commenting, which is kind of... That actually can be a good thing,
I found the difference being in a band and being solo was you get the freedom to make the decisions, and cultures. We used to have a bloody band meeting to decide what colour car we were going to get rent. It was one of those things. But you get all the freedom to do your own thing, but you miss that sort of okay, is this working or what? You're on your own.
Yeah.
So you wear it. It was the same for you.
Yeah.
And what about musically? What was the difference in the set? What did you feel? Were you playing Hunter songs?
A couple, but I went for a much more, was just acoustic pop music. Yeah. But look, it took me quite a long time to work out the sound I was after, and just because you're really basically dealing with the fundamentals of what you can do with your hands and your mouth.
Yeah. So what were the similarities then? What was the common thing that?
Well, the lyrics were
lyrics.
The same thread. Still writing about similar things. Things that I'm compulsively obsessed with.
But energy levels. You must be delivering the same sort of intensity.
Mine, but the band. See, the thing with Hunters too was that the phenomenal intensity of the rhythm section in particular.
It was unbelievable. Yeah.
And that's you know, that wasn't there anymore. So, but songwriting, I just look. I have to say, like over years and years and years of playing solo, it's, you know, I've developed something that's pretty unusual
and unique.
And I've had to basically find myself, I suppose.
You guys you haven't done Reformation tours or anything like that, have you?
No.
Has there ever been any talk of it?
Yeah.
Are you thinking about it?
No.
Would you consider it?
No.
When I rang and spoke to you, you sort of jumped at the, and I got the feeling that you had a, you know...
I had a vision of
me
Jimmy
and you
Barnes singing this song.
You don't make me feel like a woman anymore.
That's right, yeah. But not looking at each other while we do it.
Don't catch my eye. But, I mean, I remember seeing this song, Say Goodbye, you know, at Hunter's gigs, you know, and the audience, blue singlets, hairy armpits, all screaming along with it. And that was the women.
They're a lovely bunch.
No, but all the blokes, you know, like, they loved singing this song, didn't they? It was a classic.
Well, they caught on. I mean, they caught on to the joke.
It's a really clever lyric. It's very good.
Yeah, I thought they might.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, they did.
Yeah.
And it was just
quickly.
It's a great thing to be in the middle of it, though, you know, and sort of feel that energy, because they've got one that they're just loving this, the melody and the drive and all that sort of stuff, but they're loving the joke at the same time. You know?
Yeah, and then they knew when the gap was coming, because I made sure that there was a gap.
So they could all
the
scream
band
it.
stops, and I sing that line, and then the band starts again.
You don't make me feel like I'm a woman anymore.
Well, hopefully I won't miss the gap. Should we have a gap?
You call the gap.
You call the gap, and I'm going to follow you. I'm going to make you sound like your first band, all right?
Here we go.
Just the other night I come home after 3 months of constant grind and travel, and I went sniveling when crawling around to my girlfriend's house. Came down hard upon me, ground a finger into my breastbone, and she said, you don't make me feel like I'm a woman anymore. You don't make me feel like I'm a woman anymore. You don't make me feel like I'm a woman anymore. And I know it's been a long time. Seems like it's been going on forever. And my heart is beating too big. Too big for the space that it's meant to hold. Say goodbye, goodbye, my little lovely. As we turn down the light. Say goodbye, goodbye to the naked truth. Your skin is looking weary, and your eyes are closing down on the day, down on the day. Seems like it's been going on forever, but just as black as white, and just as night is day. The light is gonna leave you, and you're all gonna fade away. Say goodbye, goodbye, my little lovely. As we turn down the lights. Say goodbye, goodbye to the naked truth. Your skin is looking weary, and your eyes are closing down on the day. Say goodbye, goodbye, my little lovely.
My first guitar lesson, that's what I think I need. I've always seen Mark as probably one of the most intense men in the rock business. We first met at a place called the Razor Club in Melbourne, which was one of Australia's first rave clubs, hanging up in the corner with Michael Hutchins and Mark. And so I've known Mark since then. It was really great to sit down and chat with him. He spoke about the strain that his mother taught him about Celtic songs. I can hear that in all the Hunter songs. So that was a real revelation for me. To sing, you know, Say Goodbye, which was the classic, you know, You Don't Make Me Feel Like I'm a Woman Anymore. I remember when I heard that song, I thought, what the hell is he singing? So I played it again, got the lyrics, and I just thought it was one of the funniest and most well-constructed rock songs that I'd ever heard. And so to sing it was just fantastic.